Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines in Dallas, Texas,
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen in Denmark.
and today we were talking actually a couple times about this. Jackie had happened to notice something at his work that they were doing that he was surprised about. So I don't want to steal his thunder. So Jackie, why don't you tell me what you happened to notice?
Uh, I noticed that I can't remember exactly which episode it was, but someone mentioned that they had um, a bot doing something, and not long after it was maybe not publicly. I don't know how you'd say that, but it was announced to everybody that they had this new digital colleague
Mm,
in one of our sectors, and that was interesting. And they had named it something human, and
yeah.
what's that? Interesting. And I asked around, and it turned out that there was uh, uh, a late afternoon talk topic, whatever. Um, what's that called? Some meeting? No, someone going over whatever
Yeah.
for people who were interested.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And yeah, and I was like, okay. Usually I wouldn't stay that much later because picking up kids and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, okay, it might be interesting. So I went and got a good explanation of what it was. So apparently we're using a piece of software to write these software bots. I think the one we're using is UiPath, but the the um, the talk, I'm still looking for a word to describe what that would be. But
A brown bag? Is that what you're kind of thinking of? Where someone gets up and shares, like, here's what we're doing, and it's information to learning experience for other people.
yeah, kind of. It wasn't exactly that, but it was kind of what it was, right? It was like an info meeting about
Okay.
um, how the company or what it's doing. Or
Oh, okay.
so if you're interested, it's not because it's your field, but if you wanted to learn more about what that
Yeah.
was. And they came, and we had people from different aspects, and apparently we had a full team or process of people who actually did this. And we only had two bots at this moment, but apparently we had in the company we had like I'd say ambassadors or idea getters or whatever you'd call those, and then a team of people to receive, validate, and um, check if a task like that would be um, viable
Hmm.
economically and stuff like that. If it was done enough, if it had some kind of work like impact and different types like that. And then after doing all that, the idea would be shipped off to a separate company that would then program it all and document all of what they did and test it and then send it back to us for production or going live or whatever you call it. So it was kind of like a three-step or three phases like thing. And it I had went to it because with all the AutoHotkey programming I do, I was like, automation bots? That sounds a lot like what I'm able to do.
Yeah.
What is my company doing? Why are they most likely using a lot of money on some kind of
Yeah.
big program for this? And I'd say they were getting some value for the money. And to me, the weird part of it was that even with the UI bot, what it really was, in essence, to me, when looking at it, was a remote desktop. so a server somewhere, I don't care if it was a virtual one or whatever it was, it had a Windows interface, and that was the bot's home, the UiPath bot. It
Yeah.
had its own Windows computer. That's it. Here it is. It now lives here.
Yeah.
And then it opened a program and started clicking the buttons and waiting for something new to get into view. And it's very, very simple programming, or very, very simple automation, might
Yeah.
be a way of putting it. And and of course, one of the representatives of the company who made it was very quick to say, "Oh, everything can be sped up, and it's the program that it's working with's fault that it's so slow." Blah 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 blah. There was a lot of excuses for why the process wasn't happening any faster, but that wasn't really what the other parts of the team was focusing on. There was people that had priorly done the task. They were very happy because they now didn't need to do the task.
Yeah.
And there was other people who waited for the task who was very happy because now the task was always completed on time and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. So and there was other people who had done a lot of legwork and a lot of research to make sure that it actually was able to be done, and they now didn't need to do that either. So there was multiple people in the process of producing what the bot was now producing that were very happy about it. And the bot was just doing what seemed to be maybe, let's say, 8 people's half-hour task. Something they used half an hour on,
Yeah.
maybe once a week, every
Wow.
week. But
Yeah.
that's still 8 half hours.
Sure. Yeah.
And the bot was able to now do it, and it might have used maybe half an hour, because the reason they were using so much time was they needed to wait on each other
Oh, interesting.
for different parts of it. And
Oh.
so now it was able to, at night, within a few hours, complete the task that they would have, if one had the task completely, would use an entire day on each week. So a fifth of a work person's time. So I just felt that it was a good thing to automate. But what was most interesting to me was that our company had like said, but you, the 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 one out there with all the work, you didn't need to think about the bot, how it's doing it, what it's doing. You didn't need to learn anything about how to automate tasks or anything. You just needed to see tasks that might potentially be automatable,
Mm-hmm. Oh.
tasks that you would identify as being something that you did often, or something that your colleagues were using time um, on a regular basis. And then you would flag that for the second phase.
Mm-hmm.
So you were in the first phase, and that was meant for all the people in the company at some point. They're just meant to identify tasks that are repetitive
Mm-hmm.
in some way or something. And then the second phase, the people there would then come out and with whatever expertise, analyze, look, document, and try to step out what if this was something that would warrant automation. And if they then decided that it warranted automation, they would then ship it off to someone externally that would then automate it, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody would be happy. But I had thought that this process was both more complex and maybe even less structured. So from the company uh, point of view, They didn't really need to teach anybody anything. They didn't have the the liability of having someone hired in that had a specific skill set.
Mm-hmm.
They would let the other company take care of that. They
Yep.
could have as many people that was able to do that as they wanted. And if they wanted our money, then they had to be able to do it. Their headache. But in our is only phase 1 and phase 2 that was really important. Having people that was able to analyze if a task was ripe for automation,
Mm-hmm.
and then everybody else, they just needed to be able to see if something was repetitive. And to me, it was like almost anything we do is repetitive.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, I had actually hoped to maybe get enough insight to get closer to actually doing some automation. And that was absolutely not what my company was really doing. They were actually removing themselves from having any kind of knowledge about the actual automation part. And I was like, okay, so now I get why they're using the amount of money on it, because they're actually buying the service somewhere else. I was like, yeah, for a company seen here that only believes that very few, very high level or low level, whatever you would call them, very high profile tasks that we really do a lot of, and they're worth automating. And that's not my belief. I believe that so many of the tasks that we do every day could benefit from some kind of automation. It's not because I want to automate myself out of a job. That's not what I'm saying. But I have always been, I want to be the creator. I want to be creative. I want to be the one who has ideas, uses my imagination and stuff like that, and having to do with people and conversing with people, bouncing ideas back and forth and stuff like that. I don't actually need to write 100 words a minute just to be productive, right? That's not what I see as being using the skills that a person has for the best of their ability. Just like humans has for, and our society perhaps has for years now, been trying to crank out more and more efficient people, more and more computer machine-like people. You should be able to produce from 8 to 5, and you need to be as efficient as possible while you do it, and you need to produce this many pieces of whatever it is that you produce. And it's like, that's what we have machines and computers for.
Jackie, we gotta follow up on that. That's a brilliant insight of how wrong most businesses are when they try to get people to be more productive. They try to get them to work faster, doing the same approach, right? And it's like, look, the computer can do so much of that so much faster, right? We should remove that part of it and let them do the brain stuff that they really should get paid for. I think that's a wonderful way to consider this whole thing of they're missing out on so much stuff of what could be, how people are going to be more efficient. It shouldn't be by keeping their nose down and just typing faster, right?
No.
And do that. It's a bad approach. It's remove those stupid things, the mundane things, and let them make decisions on stuff.
I heard it at one point being a thing in, I hope it's not a thing in program jobs anymore. But at one point, I did hear that people's typing speed was an important thing to get on there. And of course, there needs to be some kind of typing speed if you're in a coding job, sure. Yes. But to me, it should be much more about them producing good code, working code, of whatever, readable, whatever it might be. I'm not hired to do programming per se, but I'm guessing that a programmer who actually writes stuff that others can read and work on and extend and stuff like that is much more valuable than someone writing spaghetti code 2 times faster.
Faster, right? That's a brilliant insight, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Actually, years ago, we talked about how long we've been working with computers. I was using, what was it, Microsoft Word Perfect. Right? It wasn't Microsoft Word, it was Word Perfect on a DOS computer, but it had a GUI interface. And I took a class in Word Perfect. And the teacher, she was from this typing, and she's like, here, type out this page and then format it this way. And I'm like, why are you testing on my typing skills? This was a timed test. You had to do it like in 10 minutes. And I'm like, I'm not a fast typist, but I was by far the best at understanding the formatting and structure. I was actually better than her at a lot of the stuff, but I'm like, I can't type that fast, right? And she thought about, she actually reconsidered. She didn't change the grading then, but she acknowledged, she's like, it is a good point. Most people, it's getting more and more people look at the outcomes. Let's evaluate people on what they produce, not some arbitrary thing of something else, right? Let's actually go on the metrics, because in programming you can, right? You can really go off of a hard thing of what they're actually delivering.
Yeah, and I recently talked to one of my colleagues that actually do a lot of typing. She writes a lot of instructions and stuff and formats and makes sure it's available online and stuff like that. And what I said is that now we're so close to having things that are able to just transcribe directly from a dictation,
Right.
and maybe more in English than in Danish, but still it's coming along.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's still keeping a typist in the game is that you can actually type words faster than you can pronounce them.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So the thing is that if you actually need to speak the word for the computer to write it, that would be slower than someone actually typing it.
Interesting.
And that then moves on to one of the things that I know Elon Musk said it at one point, and recently his new brain interface thingy was announced, and it's apparently a bit better than like the Cochlear and other brain implants that is actually able to interpret sounds from death and stuff like that.
I think I mentioned this to you before when I was at TI, and I happened to be working there. But if you Google Texas Instruments voiceless cell phone call, you can watch a video on YouTube where the guy's on stage and he thinks his call, and he calls someone, and his thoughts trigger the audio you hear. He calls someone, you can hear it, him talking. And what they do is they have a sensor that goes right around here, and your brain, even when you're not speaking the words, your brain, when you say them in your head, sends the triggers here, but I guess you choose not to move your mouth, but they can detect actually what's there. And it was just like, wow, like it was crazy, because you can literally, and they have one where he's moving a wheelchair around with his thoughts of where to go and just using his mind to direct and do stuff. And that was like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I know the company that he worked with, I can't remember the name of it, was that they had, instead of, I think the Cochlear has like 8 sensory points or something like that, where or maybe it has 50 or something, but this newer one had at least 10 times as many as the one prior. And what he has said multiple times is the place that people end up maybe becoming obsolete in a work or IT type situation is when our input output becomes too slow. When computers or AI or different systems will, when we become the slowest
right
link,
the bottleneck. Yeah
that's where you begin with a futuristic look in it, seeing where you try to remove people completely from the equation when trying to do stuff, and that's of course one of the things that he's trying to get around with using money on that research, right?
But this is another, I think it's a good, I got to write this down. It's a good topic for further podcast is how do we, for AutoHotkey, when we attack a problem, look at and really understand where the human slowness, part of it is, because often it is the human slowing down the entire process, right? Or it's little bits and pieces, but the computer can do certain things very, very quickly. And if we can avoid that waiting for a human to respond, often it's not even that they're not doing it fast enough, it's that they doing something else and then it stops the process from happening, right? They got to wait for the human comes back to it. But I think it's a really good insight of a way to help decide what to code, and when you do, the pain points to kind of try to eliminate.
Yeah, and I not because I know it exactly, but I know from people automating different programs, different games, different stuff like that, most of them actually have a delay on, let's say, a mouse click before counting it. Because if a human clicks the button, it's actually so slow. The action of a human clicking the button is so slow that if the computer acted on anything, any input, it would actually take a human click as being maybe 50 or 100 input actions if it just started listening, and if it just looped and was like, oh, he's clicking the button, oh, it's still down, it's able to do and act and take the input so many times on a human action. So if let's say you're sending a click to a specific program and it's not acting, sometimes you need to tell AutoHotkey to act slower. Make sure the button press is down for 50 milliseconds before counting it. And it's just like, really? So we've already slowed down when the computer is supposed to act because we're the one inputting the action. And it's like, so we're already at a point where we're actually, making room for the human slowness.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that is where, when we talk about using calm type of an approach versus, watching for keystrokes and doing things like that's why another reason why calm is, it's not just the reliability of it, but the speed of it doing the stuff. You don't have to worry about two hotkeys or not hotkeys, hot strings. I was typing this and I'm down, but this was not up yet, and I'm waiting for this thing to.
We have had it a lot of when we automate web pages, and you've probably had it. I've had it, and I've helped a lot of people with issues with it. They would like make a navigation event, like navigate to this page, and then the next line they'd make is look for this element ID.
Yeah.
And then the script would come back and say, I can't find that element ID. And then they'd say, but I can see it. It's there. I know it. I'm measuring it. I have my mouse over it. And it's like, but the script looked for it before the page had finished loading.
Right.
So you actually, where we don't, if the page is fast enough, we don't even consider that loading time is actually something that needs to be taken care of. Because, hey, when I see the element, it's there, I click on it. But the computer, if you say, go to the page, look for it. Go to the page, and before the page is ready, it will look. And it's just, input speed. Okay.
Awesome.
I think
so. Wrapping it back up, getting back to the whole your company using UiPath and stuff. And I mean, you don't have to comment on this if you don't want to, but did part of you want to go to them and say, hey, how much did you spend on all this? Because I probably could have automated this in 4 hours of my time, and the tool's free. Right? Did that cross your mind?
It totally did. That was why one of the reasons I went to it was kind of like, if that opportunity like showed itself, I would have
Yep.
mentioned it in forum, and I stayed around for a bit after it
Yep.
was done to see if I could get a hold of someone who was worth telling it to.
Yep.
But doing the talk, they themselves talked the company out of that, because they actually didn't want to have someone hired at the company with special skills.
Gotcha.
And they wanted to be able to pay someone to deliver a fully tested, documented package ready for use.
Yeah.
And that was what that company was offering. It's
Yes.
not the same as my own company being able to hire a team to do the same thing, but they wanted the automation here now.
Yeah.
And this company over here was offering the entire package.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's just still one of those, like when I was at TI working in research, this lady paid a company to come in and do some statistics. And I told my boss, like, this is what I do, right? And he's like, well, how about you go ahead and do it? And we'll pay them to do it. So they charged TI $10,000, right? And it took them 2 weeks, right?
Mhm.
I did my results in about 4 hours. And lo and behold, we got the same results, right?
Yeah.
And my boss just showed him. He's like, by the way, here's the report. By the way, Joe did this in a couple hours, and look, the results are identical, right? Like, but he knew, kind of to your point, they had already hired on, they had already did all the stuff. So he just wanted to say, like, by the way, we can save some money here.
Yeah. And I'm like, when walking away from the meeting, it wasn't like I was discouraged.
Yeah.
I was like,
But,
okay,
yeah.
so the big company-wide, whatever task they decide, let them have them.
Yeah.
Then I'll take all the small day-to-day stuff, because there's lots and lots of that anyway.
Well,
So,
at some point, I mean, you could look on the other side and say, it's awesome that you should look at it as a positive thing, right? Because no matter what, it's a good thing for your company and probably for you as well. But maybe if they start doing it enough, they'll want to have an internal person that actually understands a lot of the stuff. And if then maybe you could step into that kind of role, saying, I understand this, I actually do this, and and I can work in that area. What?
Are we gonna have Taco Tuesday?
Yeah, in a while. Okay. I guess I gotta go.
okay, fair enough. There's Taco Tuesday.
It's Taco Tuesday. Yeah. Do they have Taco Tuesday in Denmark? I'm guessing.
No, not really. No.
Maybe you got to start a trend, Jackie. That's
Yeah, Taco Tuesdays. Yeah. Well, what do you have on Wednesdays? No.
right.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right,
you
man.
need to go, and we are already a good amount.
Thanks, man. It's a good talk.
Yeah.
See you later.
Yeah, bye.